April this year, ministers for culture from 18 Pacific Island countries and territories endorsed the Pacific Regional Culture Strategy 2020-2032 to guide and facilitate a regional approach to culture, including through informing national culture strategies. The strategy is aligned with the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent, which sets out the broader overarching Pacific development aspirations. The regional culture strategy is proudly Pacific-led, Pacific-owned, and reflects the priorities and aspirations of the region. The 5 priority areas are cultural policy frameworks, cultural heritage, cultural well-being, cultural innovation, and cultural statistics, with 3 cross-cutting priorities being research, youth, and capacity development. The strategy also helps us to address the most pressing issue of our region, climate change. It will help reinforce the value and contribution of traditional knowledge to climate change adaptation and mitigation, and strengthen efforts to address climate change impacts on culture, cultural heritage, natural heritage, and the potential loss of intangible cultural heritage and languages associated with displacement and climate migration.
Culture and traditions are well recognized in our legal system and lives effectively in our daily life. We are bound by our Constitution to be our obligation and responsibility to support the fostering and strengthening and development of culture and traditions in Tuvalu. Our national strategy for sustainable development, namely Tekete, reflect well our traditions and culture. The word Tekete, which literally translates as a basket in Tuvaluan, symbolizes repository by which we store and preserve our traditional knowledge and wealth to be utilized to support our daily needs and well-being, while simultaneously building a resilient future.
On the 24th of June of this year, Aotearoa New Zealand celebrated its first public holiday that distinctively recognises and celebrates our Indigenous worldview, Te Ao Māori. Matariki is a cluster of stars that rise in June and July, heralding the start of a new year. Matariki is an extremely important celebration for Māori across New Zealand, celebrating the gathering together of family and friends and looking forward to the promise of the new year. As we collectively look ahead to tackle the impacts of global challenges on cultural heritage across the world, I want to stress the importance of bringing Indigenous communities into government policy, design and decision-making processes. This enables us to have a different conversation, but more importantly, focuses on intergenerational, sustainable transformation that takes into account the well-being of our whānau, families and communities.
Australia acknowledges the importance of respecting and promoting Indigenous peoples' rights to care for their ancestors. Under the principles of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the return of ancestors is a basic human right, and Australia has supported this for over 30 years. This has seen the return of over 1,600 ancestors and nearly 2,000 cultural heritage objects from overseas collections, along with the return of over 2,800 ancestors and 2,300 sacred objects held in major Australian collections to their traditional custodians.
The people of Kiribati value their culture, which has sustained them for generations and is providing a strong backbone in the time of globalization and urbanization. Through culture, we can connect to tradition and practices. Traditional knowledge can be applied to help us prepare and respond to natural disaster. I'm happy to say that my government has recently established the legislation in Kiribati, the Mondiacult Act 2022, for the protection, preservation and promotion of the museum and cultural heritage in its parliament sitting. This is the first legislation to establish ever since the Culture and Museum Office came into existence. We believe that this legislation will not contribute to protecting and safeguarding the cultural heritage.
In September 2021, the Belau National Museum, through UNESCO, have made efforts to enable and strengthen the creative industries in Palau by mobilizing local musicians, painters, carvers, weavers, and potters. Through this effort, it was clearly seen that creative arts are in need of a platform to exchange information and share knowledge in their specific craft and artistic creations. Although Palau has made progress in protecting and preserving our physical treasures and heritage, we still have much to do to promote and strengthen Palau's rich cultural heritage, to foster youth development, complement tourism efforts with environmental protection, and facilitate discussions and dialogues around culture in our economic goals, social stability efforts, and better healthcare and access to nutritional food. In particular, our national identity and our language continues to be affected amidst the technological advancement, global exchanges, the unprecedented pandemic, and climate change impacts. Developing and strengthening cultural tourism, promoting creative industries, and investing in Palau's cultural professionals will help ensure that we can continue to thrive, but also be mindful of treading carefully with our earth, and that we do not drastically alter the delicate system we have.
Women, young people, rural communities, and indigenous peoples are the beating heart of the creative sector in Tonga. Their talents and innovative ideas are often the primary source of livelihoods. Their engagement in the creative sector encourages appreciations of and pride in our distinct local heritage. Culture, after all, in so many ways, the expressions of the soul of the people. The creativity, the knowledge of age, old traditions and skills, the awareness they bring to Tongan culture sparks greater interest and investment in the safeguarding of our tangible and living heritage.
Pacific states, and specifically in the Cook Islands, we rely on tourism for revenue generation. Tourism provides much needed economic return for creative and cultural producers. Through cultural tourism, Pacific Island countries can promote visits to heritage sites, parks, and local art scene, including our music, our art, our heritage arts, and our local crafts, local cuisine, cultural village, and community experience. Finally, we truly must recognize the importance of our cultural resources towards creative industry in our production and our resources.
In the Pacific, cultural and natural heritage are understood to be one and the same, and their importance extends beyond the economic. Pacific culture are inherently based on the ecological relationships and biodiversity hold artistic and spiritual value for our community. The prospection of natural and cultural heritage is an important issue for the livelihood for us, as industry like tourism and fisheries can constitute over half of the GDP of many economies. Culture is essential for the people-centered approach to sustainable development. It plays a central role in achieving social cohesion and stability, economic development, environmental sustainability, and resilient community. This is why we commend members of the adoption of the declaration from this Mondiacult Conference 2022 and look forward to an inclusive and collaborative approach to its implementation.